In this video I want to show you more features that have been added to the relay controller since it was first released in 2021. At the time of recording this video it's December 2024. So let's go through the features. Before I start, let's just show you that we've got a 2-switch relay attached, and you can see here that the software has identified it, and it's the HERT-M board with 2 switches. So let's have a look at some of the additional features that have been added. So I'm starting with a blank trigger here, and so it's a new schedule. I'm going to add a trigger. Now the first thing you can do is you can have what's called a next trigger. So let's make this a next trigger. I'm going to control both switches. So with switch 1 I'll turn it on for a second and off for a second, and I'll repeat that 3 times. And with switch 2 I'll turn it on for half a second, off for half a second, and I'll repeat that 6 times. So let's play this individual next trigger and watch what happens. You can see that switch 1 turned on and off 3 times and switch 2 turned on and off 6 times over the same time period of 3 seconds. Okay, let me add another next trigger. Again, I'm going to control both switches, and this time I will turn them on for 1 second, off for 1 second, and repeat that twice. Let's do the same for switch 2, and also repeat that twice. So let me just play this individual trigger. So what is the purpose of a next trigger? Well, the way it works is that when you play the complete schedule using the play schedule button, the app will start off with the first trigger, which is to turn both off. Then if there is a next trigger immediately after the first trigger, the software will go on and play the next trigger automatically. And when that trigger completes, if there is another next trigger, the app will play the next trigger as well. In other words, if you have multiple next triggers consecutively, then the schedule will play all the triggers in sequence. So let's see what happens when I play the whole schedule. The next trigger 2 is operating, and when that finishes, the app moves on to next trigger 3, and then it completes. There is also this new repeat option here for the whole schedule. So if I tick that and play the schedule, you can see that the app is playing the schedule the first time through, and when it completes it will return back to playing the schedule again. Now because I've set this to 0, it will repeat indefinitely. You might want to just add a number of times that you want it to repeat. So let's just stop that. Here I've set the repeat number to 2, so we should just play this twice. Let's watch this. Notice that this button is showing you how far it's got in the repeat sequence. So it's on the first time here. It's now on to the second sequence of the schedule, and then it will stop. So rather than have these as next triggers, I'm going to change them into key triggers. So what is a key trigger? Well, a key trigger allows you to assign a keyboard key to the actual trigger itself. So for this trigger I'm going to assign it the key W. So I've pressed W on the keyboard, and for this trigger I'm going to assign the key E. Right, let's play the schedule. Now if you notice now, nothing's happening, and the reason for that is because the triggers are key operated. So the schedule will not fire any of the key triggers automatically. You have to use the keyboard. So this is quite useful. If I press the key W, it's playing trigger 2. And if I press key E, it's playing trigger 3. And you can switch between them whenever you like. So if I press W and now E, W, E, you can switch between any of the key triggers. So this is quite useful. You might want to have some complicated sequences of switch commands that you can activate by pressing certain keys on the keyboard. Next, I'll talk about switch panels. So let's turn them on. You can do that here. And as you can see, when you turn on the switch panels, you get a visual representation of each switch. These panels can be placed wherever you like, and the software will remember where you placed them for next time. So I'm going to put them over here. So what do? Well, I'm going to play this schedule similar to the first example, but slightly different times here. So let me play the schedule. Now, as you can see on the panels, it's counting down the amount of time remaining, and it's also showing a representation of whether the switches are on and off. So that's quite useful if you want a visual representation to people who are looking at the software, or you want some feedback yourself in terms of what's going on with the switches. There we go, the whole schedule is completed. Now the other thing you can do with these is while the actual schedule is running, it's still playing here. You can actually turn them on and off here. Now you see how that's toggling as I click on the switches? That's because we've got this switch keys option here, which is actually set to toggle. Let's turn off the toggle feature. Now watch what happens. I can turn the switches on and off. On, off, off. So as well as showing a representation of what's happening with the switches, you can also interact with the switches with the mouse on these panels here. Another feature is the ability to name the switches. So for instance, you might have a light connected to switch 1 and a motor or a fan connected to switch 2. So it'd be better to name them that way. So just right click on the switch. You can either right click here, or you can right click here, or up here. So I'm going to name switch 1 lamp, and notice that now switch 1 is named lamp. On switch 2 I'll click here. Let's name this motor. And we now have the name of the switches all over the app, and the software remembers the names between sessions, so it will always put these names back into the software each time you run it. Let's have a look at some of the new settings. So with the switch panels, you can have them visible when the app is minimized. Now at the moment it's not that way, so if I minimize the app, notice that the switch panels also disappear. But you might want to keep these showing while not showing all this. So if we go to here and turn this on, if I now minimize this, notice that these stay visible. So that happens even while you're playing. So if I play this and minimize, notice that the switch panels stay showing. You can also force them to stay on top of everything else by ticking this option here. This option up here is also useful for the switch panels. If you tick this, then each time you start the app, the switch panels will be restored back to their current visibility state and position. We've also introduced a keyboard hook to allow the key triggers to work regardless of whether the app has got the focus or not, the keyboard focus. So that's quite useful if you were doing something in some other application and you wanted to press the W key or the E key or whatever key it is you've associated with the triggers to cause the triggers to activate. There's also a watchdog. If you turn that on, if there's any problems with the app while it's running and it crashes or it stops running for whatever reason, the watchdog will restart the app. Okay, that's it for now. If any of you have any ideas for more features, simply send an email to nigel@rightbooth.com. And thanks for watching.